Hello everyone. So in our last video we had a look at just getting started with forms. And we ended up our video looking at this bit of code here in creating just the most simple form that we could create with our form tags and our input type of text. So our input type of text, or our text box, is our most simple and probably most often utilized text field or form option. But in this video, I want to talk to you about some other input types, and specifically some other input types that were brought to us via HTML5. So let's start off talking about input value. So the input value, as we mentioned in the last video, is a self-contained element. So the input element is self-contained, meaning that it only uses one tag and it doesn't wrap any other content. So, we just saw that there in our example code that we used for that CodePen site. The value of the element is provided by its attributes and their corresponding values. So in that instance, type equals text, placeholder equals username, and so on and so forth. So originally, the only two text-based type attribute values were text and password for password inputs. However, HTML5 brought along a handful of new type attribute values. And a lot of them are really, really cool. And this helps us to do multiple things, really. These values were added to provide clearer semantic meaning for inputs, as well as to provide better controls for users. And another thing that it does is it actually helps us with input validation. Because, if you're looking for a date, for example, if you're looking for things to be formatted as a date, if your input type only accepts dates, then you don't have to worry about doing any additional input validation on the back end via regular expressions, which is something that we'll also look at. So should a browser not understand one of these HTML5 value type attributes, it'll automatically fall back to the text attribute value. However, pretty much everything we're going to look at, really everything we're going to look at, is up to date in all modern browsers. So let's have a look at all of these HTML5 input types. So we have these input types of color, date time, email, month, number, range, search, tell, time, week, and URL. And so all of these input types, you put those in the type attribute for your input, and it looks otherwise just like your text field attribute. So what we're going to do, we're just going to have a quick look at a few code examples, then we're going to jump back to our CodePen and just look at a few of these in action. First thing we have here is our date input type. Input type equals date. We've named it birthday. Input type equals time. We've named it game time. Input time equals email. Named it email address. URL equals website. So on and so forth. So let's head over to our CodePen. Let's have a look at some of these. And we'll play with a few of them, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some of our things having to do with type attributes, with these special types. So, in my opinion, one of the coolest ones that we get to see is the color input type. Input type equals color. Name equals color dash picker, we'll call it. And let's, for our sakes right now, let's just put a break between all of these. And you see what's happened here? We've got just like a little black rectangle here. And what this is a color picker. So when we click on this, we'll actually get the operating system's default color picker that they use in their Paint program. So since I'm on Windows, when I click this, I'll get the Windows default color picker that you see in MS Paint. So when I click that, you see I get that color picker, and I can pick colors, slide up and down, do the whole thing, and it actually updates the color in the box, and it's going to submit that color data to my form if I were to submit the form, which I think that's pretty cool. Let's add a line break here, and let's try our input type of date. And we'll just enter in a name of date. And you can see by default here, we actually got a little date format here, month, month, day, day, year, 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 year. And when we click it, we actually have this little interface that it gives us here. And we can actually click this drop down here, and it'll open up a calendar for us to where we can pick a day of the month automatically, which is super cool. So, I mean, you could see how that makes things a whole lot easier for your users from the perspective of user experience. You know, I don't have to type in a date. I can just pick a date from this calendar. And you, as the developer, don't have to worry about sanitizing or normalizing the data that you get from this form field, because you can expect to get it in a particular way because of how the user enters it. Let's try another one. Let's try number. Input type equals number. Name equals number. Let's go back up a line and put in that break, so things can be a little bit different. Now, when we hover over this form field, we see we have some controls here on our right-hand side. And these are our up and down incrementation controls. Our user can type in a number directly if they wanted to, or they can use these incrementation controls to increment up and down. And if I try to type in letters, which I'm trying to do right now, GH, GAK, it doesn't let me do it. It is preventing me from doing it. Let's try one more. Let's try input. And let's go ahead and add our break here. Input type equals tel. Name equals telephone number. So, like our other fields, this is going to give us the ability to enter in a number here with a certain format. It's also going to let us enter in letters. What this, however, is going to do is this is going to do more for us in terms of data validation. So if we tried to submit something that wasn't a telephone number here, it would tell us that there's not a telephone number here. And you'll see more about that in a little later video when we talk about data validation. So I show you this one to show you that, some of these HTML5 input types have some really cool interfaces that go along with them. Some of them are more about how things work on the back end in terms of data validation. Telephone number is one of those, because it's going to look for a certain format of telephone number when you go to submit. Otherwise, it's not going to let you submit what's been entered. So one of the cool things about these input controls is that they look different on different systems, right? On whatever operating system you're using, it's going to use that operating system standard GUI for that particular element in order to show it. Just like our color picker here gives us this standard Windows color picker here because I'm on Windows. If, for example, I was on iOS and I used this date control, I wouldn't necessarily see this. I would see something that looked more like this. You know, something that looked more like the iOS version of the date control. So that also helps us to kind of normalize things in terms of the device that the user is using, which is really beneficial. You know, we're not having to do something special to make it look like it belongs on whatever device is being used. We just have to utilize these codes, and then the device does the rest. Because remember, you know, it's front-end code, and front-end code is interpreted by the browser, and so that browser is going to do what it's supposed to do on the system that it's on. So with that, I want to kind of back up here, and I want to show you all of these again, and I want to kind of leave you with all of these on the screen, because I showed you only a few of these. And I want to kind of encourage you to, from here, go out and look these up and play with these yourself and try to implement these on your own and see what they look like yourselves. You know, I could take a lot of time sitting here and kind of doing each one of them one by one, but really they all kind of look the same in terms of implementation. You know, we're only making slight changes. So my encouragement to you all is to go out and play with these. Get your hands dirty with them, see what you can make out of them, and try to figure them out on your own now that I've got you started. So that's all that I have for you for this video. Thank you for watching.